Darrell, we're so excited to have you on the Leaders Room.
Oh,
You're our
thank you.
first guest, and to think that we have somebody with decades of experience leading first as a head of HR and then as a CEO in Japan,
Right.
in China, in Singapore. I can't wait to get started hearing about your experiences. The thing that I'm most interested in finding out, though, is a question that comes up all the time in the business that we're in. And that is, some people say, a leader is a leader is a leader. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't even matter what organization you're in. You just go about the business of leadership. Other people
Right.
say it matters hugely what business that you're in. And it matters a lot where you're trying to be a leader. So my question for you, you used to be in a senior level position in Japan.
Right.
1979, I think you went there as head of HR for Disney.
Right.
Then later, you moved to be CEO of the Ocean Park Resort in Hong Kong. How well did your experience as a leader in Japan prepare you to be a leader in Hong Kong?
Not much at all. It was a surprise to me. When I went to Japan, I was young. It was typical of the Disney leaders at that time. I was in my early 30s, and so, as you probably know, by the Japanese system, my level would have been 40, 45 years old or so. And they respect age, and so that was very awkward. And
so you're a 30-year-old guy on a par with, or even a
Right.
superior to, these Japanese guys who are in their 40s.
Right.
That's got to be tough.
Yes, and so your question about a leader is a leader no matter where, I don't really subscribe to that, because you have to respect the culture. You have to give it its due. But still, you have to remember why you're there. You're there because of what you know and your experience, but you're also there because you have some management style that has elevated you to that position, and so there's something that they want out of you. And so even though there is an age difference there, you have to respect it, but you can't be subservient to
So
the
it's a bit of
culture.
both.
It's a bit of both. And for example, they're very structured. When a senior person walks in the room, I know where they're going to sit. It depends on where the window is and where the door is, and they'll sit. The senior person will be in a certain place. Well, I would never sit in that chair because that would be rude. But I would allow that for the senior person in there, and that's respecting the culture. But I wouldn't bow when he came in, because that's not me. I'm not one of them, and that's not why I'm there.
Right.
So you respect it, you go along with it, but you don't subordinate yourself to it, because you're there because they want your experience, and your style has accomplished something over the years.
That's interesting. So taking that experience from Japan, heading off to China, did you think you'd crack the code on being a leader in Asia because it worked out so well at Disney?
Yeah,
What happened when you showed up in Hong Kong?
By then I was young and experienced, so I thought I had it figured out, but not at all. They might as well have been different planets. They were so totally different. The Japanese style was very much consensus management, non-confrontational. And in China, it was exactly the opposite. Very dictatorial, micromanaging, very decisive, risk takers. And so I had to adapt to that very, very quickly.
Right.
And give in to it in terms of respect that culture and the way they did business, but don't be subservient to it.
So how does one succeed? You're a leader, whether you're from the US as you are coming into Japan or China or wherever, or whether you're an Asian leader coming into a new Asian culture. How do you figure that one out? How do you figure it out in time so that you succeed and not fail?
Well, I've done it several times. I've done it in 3 or 4 different cultures, and so I get a little quicker each time. And it just takes time to figure it out, to watch how they react. They expect, being an American, they expect to see, John Wayne walk in the room, and that's not it. That'll never. A little bit of humility will get you a lot.
What would happen to John Wayne if he walked in the room?
He might be okay, but you put somebody like Clint Eastwood in the room, and
Okay.
it wouldn't work.
Make my day?
Shoot, yes, or shoot first and don't even ask questions.
Right.
There is a stereotype of that. So, like I said, you have to be very respectful. I have always been respectful, and the first couple of months, try to figure out what their decision-making process is. Listen to the people very, very carefully, and not impose my style or wishes immediately upon the
Yeah.
the
Well, that's the
management
essence.
group.
That's the essence of respect, isn't it? Which is understanding the other person,
It
and
is,
valuing what they
but
bring.
at the same time, I always have to remember why I'm there, and any expat going in there, particularly in my case, because I will go into a startup project like the Disney Resort
Right.
for 4 years prior to opening, or it'll be a turnaround. And when you go into those kinds of situations, a startup multi-billion-dollar project or a turnaround project, you can't afford to be too forgiving. So you do have to be a bit decisive, risk-taking. So those factors come out very, very quickly in that kind of an environment.
Interesting. What do you think your followers would say about you? How would they describe your best and your worst attributes as their leader?
They'd probably say, not bad for an American. But when you say my followers, one of the principles I've always followed is find good local talent, and it's there.
Yeah.
When I left, I've been working in several projects as a CEO for 20-some years. When I leave, I don't leave expats behind.
Yeah.
There aren't any.
Yeah.
They're all local. You can find them. You can supplement them with consultants on a temporary basis, but they're always there. And so, in answer to your question, I think it's probably positive because there's a good management structure in place, and hopefully they like seeing me come back once in a while.
Well, and also it sounds like you're helping them to grow. I mean, if you're
Exactly.
finding folks who haven't had that opportunity before, and you help them to grow as opposed to fly somebody else in, makes a big difference.
The role, to me, the role of a foreigner or an expat coming into any country, they're coming in there because they have an experience that they can't get locally, and so you're really coming in there as a mentor. And if you do that correctly, then when you leave, you have a lot of people that are very happy in their jobs and do a very successful
and very
job.
capable in their jobs.
Very capable, yeah.
So what's your response to, say, an expat senior leader, I don't know, a CEO or someone else who says, I can't find good local talent? You know,
No.
I have to bring in somebody from the outside for that next level down.
You do only temporarily, because sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing that. If you're in a turnaround situation where a company is not doing well, and that's why I would be there, somebody like me. First of all, the management team that got you in that situation is probably not the management team that's going to get you out of it.
Right.
And on average, I'd say 3 out of 4 of my direct reports are gone within 6 months to a year. It's not always perfect finding those replacements locally, but I have a pretty good average of finding the right people, but sometimes you don't. And you just have to make the decision to then, that person isn't right for this job, and try it again. But they're out there. I haven't been in a job where I couldn't find the capable people to do it locally.
Who helped you along the way? Have you had a sort of mentor or a coach or somebody who took you under his wing?
I've had a handful of very, very experienced chairmen, and they have helped me a tremendous amount, and I listen to them. They're in that position because they know something I don't.
Can you give us a specific, I mean, you don't need to name names, but a specific instance, because I think having been on the receiving end of that kind of mentoring, coaching, then maybe you're in a better position to help somebody else.
Well, like I said, one thing I learned from one particular chairman, this is 20 years ago, I came into a situation that was definite turnaround. It had not been working well for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I came in there in about 2-3 months or so. I called the chairman and I said, my second in command isn't cutting it. He's just not going to make, he's disruptive. I just have to get rid of him. And he laughed.
This was a local guy?
Yeah. And he laughed and he said, well, we were wondering how long it would take you to do that. Well, the reason he laughed is because there's a foursome of poker buddies that have been playing poker for 10 years on Wednesday nights, and he was one of them. He was untouchable by any other standards because nobody had the guts to come in, and it was status quo. And I learned from him that you don't procrastinate. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
You make your decision when you have to make it, and that lesson I've carried with me.
Yeah.
And I've done that in every job.
So, any big regrets? Any things that you've learned through your mistakes that you wish you hadn't done? Again, in sort of integrating into Asia.
No regrets about the decisions I made, but the major regret, and a lot of CEOs will say this: you didn't make it soon enough.
Yeah.
I didn't make that decision soon enough. Once you make it and you execute it, you wish you would have done it a lot earlier.
Yeah.
That's my regret, is there are things that I just waited too long.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So what advice do you have for other leaders?
Well,
Sounds like making a decision quickly,
absolutely.
focusing on the locals, and making sure that you don't
Focus on the
leave them
local,
behind.
hire good people. They're out there, and the story I like to tell is that of Jack Welch from General Electric, one of the best managers of the 20th century. And in an interview, when asked about his success, he said, I know when I sit around my conference table with my staff, I know I'm not the smartest person in that room. I know they are all better at doing their job than I am. My job as a leader is to make that company work, is to make them work together. And that's what a leader does. A leader isn't the smartest person in the room. So my recommendation to an expat coming in is don't try to be the smartest person in the company. Try to get the smartest people you can, and then mentor them, or bring in mentors that can help them on a temporary basis.
Or bring out the best in who they are, because one of the observations that's very commonly made around Asia is that there's this high power distance idea, where there's, at least certainly in Malaysia this can be the case, where the person at the top and the person further down don't communicate as clearly as they could. They're not relating because they've got this sort of power gap, and so it's harder for them to relate to each other. Have you had that sort of experience?
Yes, I have, and that's I've had that in China, and also a little bit in Singapore. To me, there are two kinds of power. There's personal power, and then there's position power. And if all you have is position power, then that's where you get that kind of a problem. There's a lack of communication there, and they respect
because there's an
your
intimidation factor, right?
Exactly. It's not free flow information. It's not that classic open door policy that Westerners are known for. But if you have some kind of personal power, and you can walk into a room and people will do what you say and listen to you because you're bringing in change. It makes sense, and you're talking to them, you're communicating. Then when you leave that company, you've left something behind. You've left a group of management people and all of their subordinates that actually have changed things. You've set a corporate culture, for instance. And if you're just in a position and that's your power base, you leave, somebody else will come in, you'll just be forgotten because you didn't really make an impact. All you did was just make decisions for the time you were there. No personal impact.
So if you come into a situation where people historically have had this kind of relationship where the boss is kind of the boss, and it's about a position, and it's not about really experience or expertise necessarily so much as what my title is, and you find that people are, they've been gotten used to that. What do you do to help break that down? Because it takes a little effort on your part, doesn't it, to build the trust and openness
yes,
that you're looking for?
A lot.
Yeah.
lot. And
so what do you do about that?
To me, that's where the style comes in.
Yeah.
You can have all the experience in the world, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Somehow your style has managed to elevate you up to a position where they want you to run this company.
You're so modest.
And that's not that you're smart. Like I said, I hire people smarter than me.
Right.
And that's my rule. And of course, my wife says that's pretty easy to do. Find somebody smarter than you are. But anyway, the point there is that the style is, for me, it is to communicate. It is to get out and talk to my people. It's to listen to them and say what my first phrase I use in the morning or on a phone call is, "What can I do for you? How can I help you?" And you will find in a very
That's a big flip flop.
Very
big flip flop from what a lot of people are used to.
Because the phone call from the CEO in Japan or a CEO in a Chinese company, he's going to tell you what you're going to do that day.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. He's going to tell you what you're going to do. Or if he is walking around the office, he's going to come in and tell you what to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
I walk around and say, "Is everything okay? Anything I can help you with?" It's a totally different environment.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's an ongoing issue that I hear a lot about, and my personal feeling is that the person in your position has the responsibility to break down that distance. It can't work the other way.
No.
But that's a great question. What can I do for you? To ask that of everybody.
And that's the way I start phone calls. And how can I help you? And they get used to it, and then they get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that filters down to the levels subordinate to them.
Yeah, because I have a theory. When I hear a CEO or a senior level person, an expat, say, "Oh, I can't find any good people. I can't promote any good people. I can't do that," I feel like saying, "Well, but are you even allowing those people to come forward?
Yeah.
To figure out their own best contribution."
We found in the industry that I've been in, more the destination resorts, the theme parks, the entertainment, there wasn't a lot of that in Asia, period, 20 or 30 years ago when I got here. So very hard to find people that had industry experience, and I oftentimes couldn't. But I found people that were good marketing people, or they were good financial people, or they were good operators.
Great basic skills.
Right, and then just supplement them with a little bit of expertise from an expat coming in or a company coming in to help them that had industry expertise.
Yeah.
And if they're good people, then they're going to be good managers. They just have to learn a little bit about the industry.
So what do you look for most when you're looking for that follower, if I could use that word? But when you're looking for that next in line, what are the key characteristics that you're looking for?
This comes
maybe
from,
you can think of a great example to illustrate that.
Yes, I can actually, but this comes from my Disney training.
Okay.
We didn't care what your education was. It didn't matter. You were not being hired. You were not a teacher. You were not teaching kids. You were hired based on your communication skills, on your friendliness, your overall attitude. We would do group interviews with 5 to 7 people, group interviews. Invariably, 2 or 3 of them would stand out as the one that was comfortable with people, that had an easy smile, that communicated well, and that's the one that you hire. Those are the 2 people you hire.
For the business you're in, that's what makes sense.
That's exactly right. But it fits into the culture. They have to be technically qualified, I'd say. If I was hiring an engineer, they'd have to be technically qualified, but I assume all that's done. Then my decision is based on personality, communication skills, attitude. Are they going to fit into this culture? And I'll
Expressions of the organizational value.
Right.
Right? You want people who are outgoing, who are looking out for the customer.
Do they have the same value system that you're trying to install in this company? But one good example, many years ago, prior to opening the Disney resort in Japan, Disney has what they call an ambassador. one person. It was always a girl in Japan.
Fairly beautiful.
Yes. And I was part of the interviewing panel of about 5 or 6 people, and I did not speak Japanese. The interviews were all in Japanese with about 20 of the finalists, all of them. Yeah. At the end of those 20-some interviews, I picked the one, and the others, who were all Japanese, picked it, same person.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand a word she said.
It's just what she gave off.
It was the communication skills, it was her interaction with people, and that says I didn't know what her education was. It didn't matter. It really didn't. She wasn't being hired for that.
Yeah.
And you can take that philosophy, I think, and take it right on up to hiring your CEO.
Right.
You're not interviewing I'm not interviewing my replacement unless he's kind of been technically experience-wise qualified. Mm-hmm. So I'm not interviewing him for that.
Yeah. Darrell, thank you so much. I think you've given a lot of great insights and a lot of great advice that's going to help other people who are trying to make it here in Asia.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Okay.